What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, three-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered the number one pound-for-pound boxer in the world, Terence Bud Crawford, once again does an interview and addresses the possibility of facing undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer Errol Spence Jr. in the near future. Terence Crawford stated that the obligations and the stipulation, should I say, that Errol Spence just recently put out there in his recent interview at the Canelo Alvarez Caleb Smith fight, when he was asked about Terence Crawford fight, and Errol Spence stated that the fight could definitely happen in 2021, but Terence Crawford is going to have to understand that I am the A side. He's going to have to understand that I am the big dog in the welterweight division. I'm the doing the bigger numbers. So he's going to have to take a 60-40 split, or maybe even a 70-30 split, and just respect the fact that I'm the big dog in this division. Well, Terence Crawford responded when he went to social media and stated that, it's not my fault. See, when y'all blame it on me, it's his fault. Saying it's Errol Spence's fault. And then Terence Crawford stated he was done with this fight. Now, in a recent interview, Terence Crawford did with Dan Rafael, former ESPN boxing analyst, he stated that Errol Spence Jr. must have lost some screws in that horrific car accident that he suffered October 10th of 2019, just 12 days after unifying the titles against former two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter September 28th, just 12 short days later. Terence Crawford says Errol Spence must have lost a few screws in that car accident because he thinks I'm desperate. He says I'm good in my life where I'm at, and I don't need Errol Spence fight. So he says that, he must feel like I'm desperate at this point in time, that I'll jump at any offer he makes. And he said, no, I'm set in my life financially. I'm comfortable where I'm at with my kids and my family, and I'm not desperate, end quote. So with that said, I don't believe that this fight is going to get any closer than what it already is right now, because I believe that Terence Crawford's pride, Terence Crawford's stubbornness is hindering this fight. Okay, the proof is in the pudding that Errol Spence is clearly the A side in this situation. There's no doubt that Errol Spence is the A side. Errol Spence is doing the bigger numbers in this fight. Errol Spence is, the pay-per-view king, especially when it comes to comparing the two. When you compare Terence Crawford and you compare Errol Spence, there's no comparison as far as the drawing power, the star power, and just the numbers overall, right? The hand and legs. It just tells you everything you need to know. They did 3 pay-per-views for Errol Spence now, after his most recent pay-per-view with former 2-division world champion Danny Swift Garcia. But prior to that, he did 2 pay-per-views. He's now done pay-per-views 3 straight fights, okay? Terence Crawford did 2 pay-per-views sporadically. They were far apart. He did one with Victor Postile, and then he did one with Amir Khan. The Amir Khan pay-per-view did 150,000 pay-per-view buys. The Victor Postile did 60,000. So that's a total of 210,000 pay-per-view sales between his 2 pay-per-views. Well, Errol Spence fought Mikey Garcia, 4-division world champion, Mexican superstar boxer that did 350,000 pay-per-view buys alone. That is more than Terence Crawford's 2 pay-per-views put together. But then Errol Spence went on and he fought Sean Porter on pay-per-view right before suffering this horrific car accident, and he did 325,000 pay-per-views. So you remove the Mikey Garcia fight and the Mikey Garcia pay-per-view and the fight with Sean Porter, whom most deemed as not being a draw, as not being able to sell. Errol Spence even stated that Sean Porter couldn't sell out his family barbecue. Most people said that Sean Porter is not a big star within the sport of boxing or outside of the sport of boxing. He's not a household name. He's never done, a pay-per-view of this magnitude. And so Errol Spence, pretty much, essentially, carried the pay-per-view. And it still did just 25,000 views, pay-per-view buys, less than the Mikey Garcia fight. So you use that alone, and that did more than Terence Crawford's, nearly double Terence Crawford's 2 pay-per-views. Well, then you factor in the fact that he fought Danny Garcia, and it's being reported that he did well over 300,000 pay-per-view buys once again. And I know people are going to say, well, 300,000 pay-per-view buys, that's not a success. Well, it is a success. For today's time and for what pay-per-view is, now you had inflated pay-per-view numbers when Floyd Mayweather was on pay-per-view, and obviously Mike Tyson. Those guys were doing enormous pay-per-views, okay? But those guys, their star power, is they have surpassed the sport of boxing. They have surpassed being an athlete. They're crossover stars. They're household names in anywhere in the world. They're worldwide known. Floyd Mayweather, Mike Tyson, okay? Their 2 million, 4 million, 3 million pay-per-view buys is not going to be duplicated. So for what the times are today's time, and for what you have people that illegally stream pay-per-views, and you have so many different avenues to watch fights, opposed to having to buy the fight when you was watching Mike Tyson or Floyd Mayweather, it's so different. The landscape is completely different, okay? Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury had, I believe they stated that they had 4 million people stream the fight, the first fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. 4 million people illegally streamed their fight, okay? So you just take a portion of that would have paid for the fight, and it would have done more than, I believe it is 750,000 pay-per-views. If you take those illegal streams out of the equation, that wasn't in the equation when Floyd Mayweather fought, that wasn't in the equation when Mike Tyson was fighting. You take that and out of the equation, and just imagine how many pay-per-views they buy, right? They've done. So for today's time, 350,000 pay-per-view buys with so many different avenues and so many different ways to watch the fight, I'd say that's a success. So he's done 3 straight pay-per-view successes back to back to back. That can't be ignored. That can't be denied. The proof is in the pudding. So Terence Crawford feels like it's his talent. He's basing it off of his talent, which should be the case, but that's never been the case within the sport of boxing. It's always been your drawing power. It's always been your star power, point blank and period. Way back to the days of Sugar Ray Robinson, currently to Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, Mike Tyson, okay? The talent in the ring never indicated the negotiations outside of the ring, okay? So Mike Tyson, by the time Evander Holyfield fought Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield was twice undisputed in 2 different weight classes, and Mike Tyson still was the A side. He was far more accomplished than Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was still the A side. Why? Because Mike Tyson was the draw. Okay? When Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya took a 70-30 split. Oscar De La Hoya had already had multiple losses. Oscar De La Hoya took a 70-30 split. Why? Because he was still the household name over Floyd Mayweather, who was a 4-division world champion, who had already previously won titles at 130, 135, 140, and 147. He was going into first fight at 154 against Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya took a 70-30 split in his favor, and Floyd Mayweather was already a success on pay-per-view. He was already considered the pound-for-pound king, if not top 3, and Oscar De La Hoya was not. But Oscar De La Hoya was still the draw. He was still the sell. He was still the household name. And so Floyd Mayweather had to succumb to Oscar De La Hoya's demands. He chose the ring size. He chose the glove size. He chose the location of the fight, the date of the fight, and he took a 70-30 split in his favor. Okay? Bernard Hopkins, his star power. The talent in the ring didn't indicate the negotiations outside of the ring. Bernard Hopkins took a 70-30 split with Oscar De La Hoya. So, in this case, yes, the talent, Terence Crawford is a talent inside the ring. Is it a 50-50 fight inside the ring? Yes. But is it a 50-50 fight outside of the ring and negotiations, no. It's not close. It doesn't compare. Errol Spence is the bigger star. He's the bigger draw. He's doing the bigger numbers. The proof is in the pudding. He's selling out Dallas Cowboy AT&T Stadium. That's 60,000 fans. Terence Crawford is selling in Omaha, Nebraska, in smaller arenas. It's not close. Okay? So, back to back, 3 times over, Errol Spence has fought a Hall of Famer and Mikey Garcia, surefire Hall of Famer, 4-division world champion. He's fought a Hall of Famer and 2-time welterweight world champion with a resume that's stellar in Sean Porter. And he's fought Danny Garcia with a resume that's stellar, and who's a 2-division world champion, was unified junior welterweight in Danny Swift Garcia. All of these names, if they fought Terence Crawford, would be the biggest fight on his resume to date. And Errol Spence has fought all of these guys back to back to back. He's doing the heavy lifting. He's fighting the higher profile fights. And he's doing the bigger numbers. The proof is in the pudding. There's no comparison there. So essentially, it's Terence Crawford's pride and his stubbornness that won't allow him to bend to the negotiations and truly identify that, yes, Errol Spence is doing the bigger numbers. There's no debating that. The last time I checked, let's say he did 300,000 buys with Danny Garcia. He did 300 in the quarter with Sean Porter and 350 with Mikey Garcia. So you add that up, right? And he did 975,000 pay-per-view buys to Terence Crawford's 210,000 pay-per-view buys. It's not close. And if you you remove and you say, well, he had 3 pay-per-views. So if you remove one of them, you remove Danny Garcia, he still did 675,000. If you remove Mikey Garcia, and that's the highest one, and you just add in Danny Garcia and Sean Porter, then we still have 325,000 at least pay-per-view buys, which is still more than 210. So no matter which way you slice it, he's still the bigger draw. He's still the bigger star. He's doing the bigger numbers. So he deserves a bigger share of the pie. Point blank and period. The talent in the ring doesn't indicate the fight outside of the ring in negotiations. Point blank and period. So, unfortunately, if it continues on this path, we're never going to get what is being considered the biggest fight in the sport of boxing currently. Because there's no way Errol Spence is going to waver, nor should he waver from his stance, because he's earned his position. He's earned his keep where he's at right now. And I don't believe that Terence Crawford truly identifies what's taking place in the business side of this. As Floyd Mayweather put it when he fought Oscar De La Hoya, I'll give you negotiations today. I'll succumb. I'll be the B side, because after I defeat you, I'm going to be the clear A side. And if we go into an immediate rematch or moving further with anybody else, I'm going to be the cash cow. And Floyd Mayweather identified that, and he took full advantage. And he made himself a billionaire within the sport of boxing. That's the part that I believe that Terence Crawford is missing out and being misinformed. But who am I to tell that man what he feels like his worth? He's going to stand on his square, and unfortunately, we won't get this fight. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.